Welcome and good afternoon. I'm your host, Kinara Sankofa, and this is Education in the Community. And today I've decided to call this show PCP, Psychiatry's Controlled Population Through a Pseudoscience. And today I have three powerful guests. And I'd like to start to my very left with Dr. and Rev Niinana Kwedu, who is a clinical psychologist with 12 years experience and also a reverend. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, brother. Glad to be back.
Glad to see you again. And to his immediate right, we have Dr. Linda Lagemann, who's also a clinical psychologist with 23 years under her belt and also a member of CCHR, Citizens Commission on Human Rights International. Mm-hmm. Welcome back.
Thank you.
It's good to have you again.
Yeah, very good to be here.
And to her right, we have Professor Manu Ampim, who is a teacher over at CCC, Contra Costa College of African Studies. Is that correct?
Yeah, history and Africana studies.
Okay,
yeah.
And he's also a researcher and historian, and he's also heading up Nubia, Saving Nubia Project. Is that correct?
That's it. Yes.
Well, I'd like to welcome you all back again. Thank you very much for being here. We've been here before. We had a show that was called Mental Disorder in the World of Psychiatry, and so we wanted to pick up from there and come back and discuss some of the issues that are happening within the community, what's happening within the world of psychiatry. And I'd like to ask either one of you, is there a difference between psychiatry and psychology? And if so, what are the differences?
Well, the difference is that psychiatrists are medical doctors, first of all. They start out, they go to school for medical doctor for 4 years, then they transfer, maybe go to a hospital or some mental institution for another 4 years of study. And then from there they go in and become licensed to be a psychiatrist. Where psychologists, they don't prescribe medications, they can't. And the difference between them is this, the suffix iatry, I-A-T-R-Y, really means medical treatment. And the L-O-G-Y means science or theory. So psychiatry is the medical treatment of the psyche, and psychology is the science of the psyche.
Okay, so how can psychiatry be a science if there is no way, from my understanding, that one could know the difference of, let's say, administering drugs, as you would say here, that a psychiatrist can administer drugs. But if there's no way to determine a person or persons having a mental disorder, how in the world are they able to administer drugs when there's no science?
Well, the real deal is that, first of all, like I said, they are medical doctors, and what they try to do is to transfer that knowledge of the physical body to the mental being. And you can't do it because, like I said, there's no way for you to test whether or not somebody has a chemical imbalance or any other kind of these diagnoses that people get labeled with. So, but because they are medical doctors, let's not forget, they didn't have any credibility until they first became members of the American Medical Association.
Yeah. So you agree with this, though?
Yeah, that's why that happened. It was to try to get some legitimacy. And so and it's really just by stating that they're a science. They're not. I mean, we know that science is unforgiving. It doesn't care what your theory was or what you thought it should be. The science is there's a test, there's a result, that's the fact, and then knowledge is based on that. So in psychiatry, there are no tests. There isn't anything. If we look at all the diagnoses and go back even like everything that treatments that had been done, no science. It's a series of damaging experiments on people. But all of the diagnoses, the labels that there are in that big fat manual. I wish we had one here because it's about this fat.
I think you're talking about the DSM.
The DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. There is not a single test for any one of them to prove that it exists, what the cause might be, where it came from. People do have very real mental and emotional and spiritual struggles, but to call it a mental disorder, a mental disease, is just say so. They're just saying that.
Well, you say there is no test that can actually prove.
Right.
Many psychologists, we'll look at, Skinner was one, Benjamin Rush was another that did actual testing on the human brain. They actually call this gentleman a master bleeder. So if if there's no science, could you not consider these sort of techniques as science in that field if you're doing research and you're opening someone's brain up?
No, I'd say it's experiment. It's not science. It's like just experimenting. So back again, like the difference between psychiatry and psychology, just so that's clear for people. Like, you know, Dr. Kwedu was saying, psychiatrist starts with a medical degree, a physician, and then they go on, they do a residency in psychiatry. So psychiatry focuses on the brain, the physical structure, the brain. And so all of its interventions are intrusive on the brain. So it's, whether that's, you know, cutting it with lobotomies or electric shock with, you know, ECT, or psychiatric drugs. Psychotropic drugs are an intervention on the actual brain. Psychology is dealing with the mind, and it's talk therapy.
Okay.
So that's one difference like that.
Right.
Now, but even with all of that heavy intervention on the brain, on people's, you know, actually the only brain people have through psychotropic medication, there isn't a basis for it. There's nothing that has ever been done. There's not a single mental disorder that's shown that it is, you know, related to some chemical.
So how
and that
in
it will
the
be cured
world
by a
are
chemical.
the public, how are we able to continue to have these drugs pushed on the market if the psychiatrists have no scientific proof that any of these particular things work? And that brings me to the next question. The damage that it's doing on the human and on the brain, and I believe you mentioned earlier in our conversation in mental disorder in the world of psychiatry that one of the so-called doctors, I believe it was Skinner, was able to call something drapetomania and say you can cure a slave by actually cutting off certain limbs and so forth. Can we speak back on that again?
Yeah, if you look at the origins, this is Samuel Cartwright.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Samuel Cartwright, he came up with the term drapetomania. And this was a disorder that caused enslaved Africans to run away from slavery.
Okay.
So this is an insane opinion, but this becomes a medical fact for many people in the 1850s. So when we look at the mid-1800s, even in 1840, this is the first time in the census, which comes out every 10 years, that you have the description of people as insane or insanity. And so this has gone on and on. I mean, in fact, the founder of psychiatric care is Benjamin Rush, and even his ideas were insane.
Yeah, I actually saw this documentary. I want to go back to what you were saying, but saw the documentary of Psychiatry and Industry of Death, in which they actually had this gentleman there, Benjamin Rush.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's actually on the APA, the American Psychological Association seal.
That's right.
The logo is Benjamin Rush.
Wow.
And his ideas were destructive. They were damaging, way off base. So for him, to cure nervousness, you give somebody opium. You know, so you drug someone. You can be nervous for many reasons, but just to drug them with opium, mercury. This is the leading physician of his time. And bloodletting to make sure there's no disease, and purging. And so this man is, and matter of fact, he felt that the reason why people of African descent have dark skin, he said it was Negroidism. This was a disease.
This is another disease.
He called it negritude. Yeah, there was a disease related to leprosy. That's what he said. Yeah.
And as you follow these things, you let's just take something like alcoholism. That was 40 and 50 years that they tried to get money to deal with alcoholism, people who had alcoholism. Most people in the society, especially the church groups, deemed it as immoral, they were just derelicts, just people who were no good, didn't deserve anything, deserve anything better than what they was
Undesirables, per se.
Undesirable, so to speak. And so for all of those years, nothing ever got done. But right now, alcoholism treatment in America is like $42 billion a year. And they never was able to get those funds allocated by the Congress until Dr. Young and Dr. Beale came up with this concept that alcoholism was not just a disease of the body, but it was also a disease of the mind. There is no test that would demonstrate that alcoholism is a disease of the mind.
So let me ask you this. How is this possible through the American Psychological Association to have all these so-called disorders and the DSM and push it onto the public and we accept it? How is that possible?
That marketing, really, it's marketing. It has been. I really think that the alliance between psychiatry, pharmaceutical industry, and the government is the most powerful and most damaging force in our culture right now. So, marketing, direct-to-consumer advertising, since 1997, commercials telling us all that everything that we experience that's a struggle is a mental disorder. As soon as you call something a mental disorder, and they market the disorders. That's how you got to sell a drug. You first have to market and make people believe that something is a disorder.
So are you saying that the public is that, I won't say weak, that we are that controlled
We are
to
that
believe that any and
are.
everything, the infomercials that come through our system, that we have to believe in everything that these people, government and FTC, FDA, all these people that's working in cahoots,
We trust
are
them.
we really
we
that
trust them.
feeble-minded, which is actually a disorder. So is that what we're saying
It's
here?
a full court press.
It is.
It is.
That's right.
But it's been countless billions to market this madness. That's what it's been for quite some time. And so, but they've been in cahoots for quite a while. And sometimes you can't get around it if you want certain services or if you want to be a part of a certain program, you take this drug. So as my colleagues have said, so you can't do an MRI and find out this disorder. You can't do any surgery. You can't find out where this so-called syndrome or disorder, it's opinion.
So what happened before
It's simply
this?
opinion.
What happened before this? I mean, because we were talking about psychology, then breaking things down. The psyche is the soul, from my understanding.
Correct, originally.
Originally. So if we're dealing with the soul, then are we able to get back to the natural way of healing ourselves if we deal with the soul? And let's say we leave the infomercials alone. Okay, let's say we don't deal with the APA. So how do we get back to dealing with the soul as opposed to dealing with infomercials, APAs, and all these other guys that's in cahoots to get rid of what I call population control?
Well, I think you're doing it right now.
Exactly.
You're
You have to
educating the
educate.
community. This is the only way, because when you're talking about the soul, you got churches on every corner, just like liquor stores. And then you got the full court press, as the professor just stated, that people are in an environment where they have no control over their own condition from day to day. It's almost like a survival mode that people are in. So it isn't hard to convince people to try something when there's nothing else available to them. And so I've been in the mental health field for a long time, and I see these people constantly coming in, but they never get better. They come in for 25, 30 years, and they never get better. But when you sit down and try to talk to them about, maybe you need to go back to your psychiatrist and talk about an alternative medication or an alternative way to deal with this, they don't have the, I don't know what you would call it. They just don't seem to be able to muster up the energy to fight through that process.
And that's why I asked if we are such at a low state of consciousness and spirituality or connection with ourselves that we have to have someone else that can say, well, look, this is the problem here. And I'll believe that from them or from the APA or whoever is coming up with this craziness, as opposed to dealing with their own individuality. And you mentioned churches. Okay, are we talking spirituality, or are we talking religion, or are we talking, what are we talking here?
We're talking conditioning, because that's what churches do too. You know, you could go in one church and they'll tell you that everybody in the other church is going to hell. Well, what makes yours different from somebody else's? But not only that, when you look at people and they're out there trying to find their way through this maze, and they go to the mental health department and they have people in there who are working there, who are trained, who have bought into that condition, and they promote it. So everywhere they go, they get handed the same information that, you know, there's no help for you. You come here, we'll support you. You keep coming back, you're going to get better. Well, it's just like AA. They say if you're once an alcoholic, you're an alcoholic till you die, even if you never take another drink in your life. So you have to understand that this is, you know, people become conditioned to the point that they actually believe this stuff.
Okay, doctor?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple things. I mean, one is just the demoralizing of everybody by, and taking things out of people.